You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There is a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution or birthday card if you wish at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of November 1st, 2024. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, this is The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal, where we have late-breaking polling news to report. Things are looking bad for Barack Obama. Repeat, just days before the election, and the poll numbers for President Barack Obama are looking bleak. From the Washington Post, October 25th, 2012. The headline, Post-ABC tracking poll, Romney 50%, Obama 47%. Quote, Republican Mitt Romney has edged ahead of President Obama in the new Washington Post ABC News national tracking poll, with the challenger winning 50% of likely voters for the first time in the campaign, unquote.
From Business Insider, October 25th, 2012, quote, Gallup, Mitt Romney holds 3-point lead over Obama, unquote.
From the venerable National Public Radio, October 29th, 2012, quote, NPR poll finds presidential race too close to call, unquote.
From the always reliable Wall Street Journal, October 31st, 2012, this special report from political guru Karl Rove.
Karl
quote,
Rove, I know him. I've heard of him.
Yeah. Karl Rove, quote, Sifting the Numbers for a Winner by Karl Rove. A crucial element, the mix of Democrats and Republicans who show up this election. My prediction, sometime after the cock crows on the morning of November 7th, Mitt Romney will be declared America's 45th president. Let's call it 51-48, with Mr. Romney carrying at least 279 Electoral College votes, probably more.
From the even more trustworthy and reliable Daily Caller, November 4th, 2012, quote, George Will, hey, that George Will predicts 321 to 217 Romney landslide. Add Washington Post George Will to the landslide column, along with Fox News Channel's Dick Morris and the Washington Examiner's Michael Barone. On this weekend broadcast of This Week with George Stephanopoulos on ABC, Will revealed his prediction and added a bonus surprise by saying traditional Democratic state of Minnesota, future home for Governor Tim Walz, would go for Romney as well, unquote.
This was the extremely trustworthy Newt Gingrich on Fox News' On the Record with Greta Van Susteren on October 25th, 2012. Quote, I believe the minimum result will be 53-47 Romney, over 300 electoral votes, and the Republicans will pick up the Senate, unquote.
There's more. There's so much more. Dick Morris, for example, but we like you too much to inflict that on you. The point is, it's mere days from the 2012 election, and frankly, Barack Obama looks doomed. To this reporter, it seems clear that the only hope for Democrats is for him to step aside and let his vice president, Joe Biden, carry the ball.
4 years later.
That's exactly what we said in 2012, when people that supported Romney were told that the polls are wrong, Romney's going to win, and then they were so mad and disappointed.
Yeah, they stopped watching because they thought we lied to them, and we deserved it.
This was the point at which the Republican base had finally had it.
Yep.
They had been humiliated in front of liberals when Bush's Iraq debacle, which they had backed to the hilt, blew up in their faces. They had been humiliated again when the global economy collapsed under George W. Bush, when they had been assured that this was impossible. W had failed them. Fox News had failed them. Republican elites had failed them by letting some uppity black guy from Chicago with a Muslim name beat John McCain. The Republican base was so humiliated that they put on stupid tri-corner hats and started calling themselves the Tea Party. And now Fox News and all the Republican geniuses and gurus had humiliated them again. They had all promised a Romney landslide. A victory, a landslide, it's going to be easy. Romney himself was so sure of it that he didn't bother to write a concession speech.
Now, here's the dirty secret. Everyone Everyone knew at this point the Republican base was already a mob of bigots and imbeciles, but that fact was kept safely away from public view by elite conservative media, elite conservative influencers, conservative columnists, and of course the complicit legacy media. But you know what? Hiding the X-rays isn't the same as not having lung cancer. And the bigots and the imbeciles, they were ripe and ready for a grifter who talked like their hero, Rush Limbaugh, and not like that loser, Mitt Romney. Someone who would call McCain a loser instead of a hero. Someone who would pin the blame for Iraq squarely on George W. Bush and absolve them of any responsibility for what they had said and done during the entire W administration. I wrote this thing right here I'm about to read to you just 3 days after Donald Trump came down the escalator in June of 2015. Quote, "The story of the Trump candidacy has very little to do with Donald Trump. As I wrote a few years ago, the brain cast of the GOP spent 40 years and billions of dollars carefully breeding an army of reliably angry, paranoid, racist chumps. And they've been so successful at completely re-engineering the right's ideological digestive system that they can no longer process any information that doesn't come to them in the form of Fox-approved Benghazi goo. In other words, in order to win elections and rake in vast fortunes, the conservative brain cast has painstakingly created the perfect feeding ground for con men and demagogues like Trump. The louder and more bombastic, the better. And from David Brooks and the Wall Street Journal and Meet the Press to Ann Coulter and the Washington Free Beacon and the Breitbart Collective, in one way or another, virtually everyone in the media makes bank by flattering conservative meatheads and pandering to their delusions." Unquote.
You wrote that, Driftglass?
I wrote that back in June of 2015, Blue Gal, back when it was impossible. Trump could never win. It was impossible. Couldn't be done.
This is the answer to all the professional pundits who are wailing and wringing their hands and wondering, why is this election even close? Why? That's David Brooks.
Yeah.
And can someone explain to me why any woman would vote for Donald Trump? And how did we get here?
That would be Morning Joe.
That's Morning Joe. Yes,
that's the Morning Joe
Morning
panel
Joe.
Every day. Mm-hmm.
They know exactly how we got here. And they know their own fingerprints are all over it. Which is why no one whose memory extends back before 2016 is welcome in their charmed circle. And I want to add, this is really a tragedy.
It is.
Because, yes, their fingerprints are on it, but telling the story of, yes, my fingerprints are on it, mea culpa, let me tell you what happened from the inside, is the story.
It is the story.
And would add tremendously to the history and our understanding of this time. But they won't do it.
It is the most important story in modern American political history.
Yes, it is.
And nobody wants to touch it because they're all complicit in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Their egos won't allow it. For example, here we have the Huffington Post writing about a, quote, unemployed man with a lot of dyspeptic grievances to bleed out into the world. But for whatever reason, he lacks the means to type out his malingerings himself. So it's a lucky thing that John Harris and Jim Vandehei have agreed to be the webmasters of his live journal, which people call the Politico. There he can make all sorts of nonsensical assertions without ever being asked a follow-up question. This is the journalistic equivalent of watching two succubi reenact some of the more graphic and degrading scenes from Requiem for a Dream on the internet. Unquote. Now, that's Donald Trump, right? Nope. That's from the Huffington Post, December 31st, 2009, writing about Dick Cheney, who was flailing away trying to rewrite history to make it come out the way he wanted, where he had no responsibility for anything.
Right. Nope, nothing.
And here's the same Dick Cheney in 2007 on the TV, lying his treasonous ass off.
You have said in the past that it was, quote, pretty well confirmed.
No, I never said that.
Okay. I
never
think
said
that is...
That's absolutely not. What I said was the Czech intelligence service reported after 9/11 that Atta had been in Prague on April 9th of 2001, where he allegedly met with an Iraqi intelligence official. We have never been able to confirm that, nor have we been able to knock it down. It's been pretty well confirmed that he did go to Prague and he did meet with a senior official of the Iraqi intelligence service in Czechoslovakia last April.
Driftglass, that audio is both him lying and then the proof that he lied.
Yeah. And where he lied, you know where he lied?
Meet the Press?
On Meet the Press with the ever-reliable, totally straight shooter, never misses a trick, Tim Russert, who let him get away with all kinds of shit. In fact, I believe Cheney said off the record on the phone in some transcript somewhere that their preferred source to go to for catapulting the propaganda, platforming their lies was Meet the Press. And so please stop with the Russert would roll over in his grave if he saw what you. No, he was better than they were, but in many ways he was just as bad or worse because he lent his credibility to these liars that lied us into the wrong war and fucked that war up. Now, the Republican base is used to being lied to. That's something that just eludes the press. They're used to being lied to. In fact, they depend on being lied to. But until Trump, there was sort of an agreed upon period that had to elapse between the base being lied to and that lie blowing up in their faces, right? Maybe that was 2 or 3 Halperins, or maybe even a couple of Friedman units long. But there had to be a polite interval. The 2012 Republican election prediction lies were the breaking point because they fell apart almost instantly and very, very publicly. And that's the thing about Republican base that the legacy media could never deal with. The fact that the base doesn't just love being lied to all the time. They're addicted to being lied to all the time. And what Trump taught them was to just never be embarrassed anymore. Never be embarrassed by anything. Say whatever the fuck you want. And never give a damn, never back off. Never feel guilty about anything. Just get your freak on, revel in the lying, and rub it in the liberals' faces. Ha ha, fuck you, fuck your feelings. Of course we're lying. We don't care. And Trump has run a campaign predicated on exactly that concept. A garbage campaign of lies, racism, threats, and grievances. And you know what? At his Madison Square Garden rally, the Trump campaign might have outkicked its coverage, as the kids say. Their firing up the Nazis machine might have actually outperformed to the point where Trump has alienated enough of his supporters and freaked out enough of the fence straddlers to actually make a difference.
On the other hand, Kamala Harris has run a very, very good campaign. Damn near flawless. Did everything right and frankly, did everything centrist and squishy Republicans asked of her.
Yep.
This election is not about them. It's about us. This clarifies things considerably. All those centrists and squishy Republicans and allegedly undecided voters no longer have Biden is old as an excuse. Whatever the outcome, however this election goes, this is how we are now.
This is our country.
This is our country. And as Proverbs says, Driftglass, if you don't mind me inserting just a little bit of Bible bitch today.
I think it's called for.
Proverbs says, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. And I don't know if you are familiar with the extra canonical commandment, thou shalt not paste your campaign logo on a garbage truck in late October.
I think that's in the book of Chrysanthemum or Predicate. One of those little guys, one of those little ones in there somewhere.
Yeah, but if you should obey that commandment. And
really,
they didn't.
Don't ride a tank with little Mickey Mouse ears on, and don't plaster your name all over the side of a garbage truck and then drive it around. Truck.
And may I say, a young voter, I was on the phone with a young voter today, junior dude. And I wanted to find out if he had, because, he's a news junkie, but at the same time, he's got a lot of other things going on. And did this pass his radar? He went, oh my God, Mom. What the hell was their campaign staff thinking? I said, I don't think he has a staff.
No. And that doddering old man who can't keep his balance, trying to struggle his way into the cab of was just embarrassing.
Missing the door handle. And almost falling. And no one there managing that.
No one there to say, don't do this. This is very, very bad thing. Anyway, that's the Harris campaign. The one thing that came to mind as a writer, because we're both writers, during the Harris campaign speech, which I had to watch because I was on the Brad Friedman show yesterday, and the assignment was watch the speech and think thoughts about it and come onto the radio with those thoughts. And
you and Digby are always prepared.
Always prepared. We always do the homework. Digby does a lot of homework. My God.
Yeah.
Half the time I was just wanted to say what Digby said, just what Digby said.
As always.
But what came to me as a writer during Kamala Harris's speech at the Ellipse was how much it reminded me of the staging and the structure of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address.
Yeah.
Now, we live in Springfield, Illinois. Lincoln is buried 2 miles from here, 1.5 miles from here. Lincoln is on every structure, everything's named after him.
Everything is Lincoln. Everything.
And nobody is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is a singular figure, never to be equaled in American history. Okay, got that. But the staging and structure of his Gettysburg Address, because remember, as brilliant as that speech was, the speech didn't end the Civil War. The Gettysburg battle took place in early July of 1863, and he delivered his address on November 19th, 1863. Sherman's march to the sea to burn everything down to the sea didn't begin until a full year later in November of 1864. And even after,
I think it's really important to remember that the Gettysburg Address was a funeral speech.
It absolutely was. On literal bloody ground.
Yeah. Hallowed bloody ground.
Yeah, with, I believe, some of the bodies at least not yet interred, because there were lots of bodies. After Gettysburg, there was both Chickamauga's, and there was the Wilderness, and Cold Harbor, and of course Atlanta, and dozens of other battles, big and small, before the Confederates surrendered April 9th, 1865. But the Gettysburg Address did something incredibly important. It redefined the context of the war. Lincoln deliberately chose to deliver it on the site of that traumatic battle. There were over 50,000 casualties in that battle. There were 3,155 dead Union soldiers and 3,903 dead Confederate soldiers. And Lincoln used his words to turn a bloody battle over territory and states' rights and borders into something higher and more noble about slavery and liberty and equality and the importance of self-government. And in case there was any confusion, casualties simply refers to the number of wounded and or dead. So it was a bloody, awful battle, the biggest battle fought on the American continent in history to that point. And Lincoln drew this explicit connection between the dead Union soldiers at Gettysburg and the Union soldiers that were still fighting. He gave their sacrifice meaning. And in a very real sense, he personified the country, personified the United States by comparing it to the act of giving birth and reminding people in his audience of their founding fathers. And listening to Harris's, especially her opening remarks, reminded me of very much the same thing. She held her speech on the site of the most traumatic national event since the Civil War. She honored the men and women who'd been injured and killed defending democracy against tyranny. She drew a clear connection between that battle and this election. She made this election about liberty, civil rights, bodily autonomy, and self-government. It's not about the economy or gas prices. It's about these much higher, nobler sentiments.
Yep. Self-government was a big part of it.
Yep.
This is about us.
We know who Donald Trump is. He is the person who stood at this very spot nearly 4 years ago and sent an armed mob to the United States Capitol to overturn the will of the people in a free and fair election. An election that he knew he lost. Americans died as a result of that attack. 140 law enforcement officers were injured because of that attack. And while Donald Trump sat in the White House watching as the violence unfolded on television, he was told by his staff that the mob wanted to kill his own vice president. And Donald Trump responded with 2 words: so what?
And very importantly, like Lincoln, she gave her audience a vision of a better America that could emerge from this mess. That this didn't have to be this way. We didn't have to be this way.
That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth.
And yes, if you were curious, that was in fact Johnny Cash reciting the last part of the Gettysburg Address, because goddamn you, Johnny Cash is awesome. And so is the Gettysburg Address. So you're welcome.
Yes. On a completely different note, we were able to do some contact tracing at a local diner this week.
Yes,
for
we were.
Driftglass's birthday. We spared no expense and went to Charlie Parker's Diner because Wednesday is Meatloaf Day. Meatloaf, Mom.
Meatloaf! And she gave me meatloaf. So bless her heart.
I gave him meatloaf. This diner is a little Quonset hut type building, and it's known for its huge pancakes. There are records and album covers from the 60s and vintage signs on the wall, and the waitresses are very friendly and yet a little sassy. It's a diner. And fair to say, it attracts a pretty conservative crowd, mostly retirees, old guys sitting around a table, eating pancakes and coffee for lunch. Now, Mitt Romney actually was there at that diner back when he was busy losing to Barack Obama in 2012. So we finished eating, and Driftglass was paying the bill, and this is what he heard.
Yeah, I'm up there waiting in line to pay the bill, and behind me, the two old guys who were, now I just turned 64, so, old is a relative term. All my relatives are old. Right behind me, two guys at a table were talking. And one guy did all the talking, and one guy did all the agreeing. Sort of like, think of mice and men, And
I was going to say, you said Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble.
Yeah, that's one guy, a loud, blustery guy. The other guy, whatever you say, George, that's what you said, George. I couldn't agree more, George. But what they were talking about, I could hear clearly. Well, Steve Bannon didn't get out of prison until yesterday. This is all about the lawfare that they're doing on us. All the lawfare, because Democrats have different standards. They don't even arrest people on their side. Who hasn't even been touched at all? Hunter Biden. Wouldn't even go after Hunter Biden. But who they lock us up all the time? They lock up the right all the time. And Steve Bannon didn't even get out of prison until yesterday. And I just sat there going, well, in this Springfield diner, I should have whipped out my Washington Post credentials and asked them for their opinion.
So Driftglass told me this on the way home, and it immediately brought to mind Jesse Waters from the night before. And to my mind, this is the funniest thing anyone said all week.
Every politician has an enemies list. The only difference is that Trump hasn't prosecuted anybody on his. Biden and Harris have an enemies list. Yeah. And they've prosecuted Trump, Bannon, Navarro, Rudy, Weisselberg. I could go on for an hour with the amount of Republicans they locked up. Biden, just last week, while he was campaigning for Harris, said we have to lock Trump up. Trump's running for president to stay out of prison because he's on Biden and Harris's enemies list. He's literally running against a prosecutor.
How dare they prosecute us for crimes?
It really is. It goes, this really was contact tracing. You can see they've already been preloaded with all the keywords and all the things they're angry about. They watched this shit last night. And today, this was at the forefront of their tiny, soft little minds. That how unfair it all is. Poor Steve Bannon had to go to prison for nothing. And they're doing lawfare. And Hunter Biden, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. These are our neighbors. We live here. Seriously. Coastal elites, if you want to know why these people are the way they are, how they got this way, well, just listen to our fucking podcast and we'll tell you. But come talk to us. We will explain this to you in words that even you will understand.
It is programming, literally, yes.
Over the course of decades. This didn't happen last week or last month. This happened for 40 years. Anyway.
Hey, Driftglass, let's do a news roundup. The Bidening continues. President Joe Biden stuttered a little when he condemned Donald Trump's fascist rally in New York. And the reaction from the legacy media was, hallelujah. Now we can get our both sides freak on because the legacy media is broken beyond repair.
Yes. I also want to do a little sidebar. And first, as a news item, thank everyone for your birthday wishes. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Got a lot of nice, positive vibes. I got a book and a great family and meatloaf for my birthday. So what more could you possibly want as a person? And second, we're recording this on Halloween, and the deadline for little trick-or-treaters to show up is rapidly closing in. So if we are interrupted or a little bit verschimmeled.
Distracted at the moment.
That's why. But on to the actual news. Josh Marshall was commented on the state of that very media we just talked about. Quote, a great deal of center-left Dem discussed impatience with elite political journalism, which is being vented on the Post in reaction to the Bezos issue, but is much broader, is about journalists who in various ways see their job often giddily as scorekeeping how effective Republican lies are rather than trying to clarify whether they're true, unquote. Yep.
I don't know what to do with this headline except maybe cry. From the New Yorker, quote, Bidenomics is starting to transform America. Mm-hmm. Why has no one noticed? Unquote.
Yeah. And pairing neatly with that, this morning on Morning Joe, I overheard Elise Jordan say, you know, they made such a big deal out of Biden's cognizance and age. Why aren't we doing the same with Trump? Why didn't they do the same? What do you mean we? What the hell are you talking about we? We
Your ass
did.
is sitting on Morning Joe.
Yeah. Anyway, if Donald Trump wins, Speaker Mike Johnson has promised to take pretty much a blowtorch to the extremely popular Affordable Care Act, which currently covers 45 million Americans, including you, me, and our kids.
Mike Johnson is not going to be Speaker of the House as of next week. I keep telling myself.
Mm-hmm.
Trump promised to give Robert F. Kennedy Jr. control of several public health agencies.
Great.
So we've got that going for us. And he's going to appoint Elon Musk to a new government efficiency commission, which Elon Musk promises would necessarily involve some temporary hardship and deep cuts.
When they come for the immigrants who shouldn't be here and drag Elon Musk out of the country because the reason he got in the country was overstaying his student visa.
Right.
I wonder what he's going to do, what his next chapter in his life is going to be. Speaking of that, if Donald Trump wins, he plans to withhold federal grants from local law enforcement agencies that refuse to support his proposed mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. And there is a future scenario, and I don't ever want to see this happen to anyone, but I would like in my fictional life to see them, I think Keith Olbermann said this today, I'd like to see them deport all the undocumented workers from Florida. Mm-hmm. Because Florida undocumented workers are working in agriculture and construction. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see Florida try to survive for 1 month without agricultural workers.
Those million people.
Without those people building their homes after disasters and growing their food and harvesting it. Good luck with that.
Robert Reich reminds us that Trump has declared victory in past elections before the votes were counted, which gives Trump a head start in lying about corruption in the voting process.
Anyone who follows elections knows about the red mirage and the blue shift, as the former political director of Fox News has testified.
So in every election, and certainly a national election, you expect to see the Republican with a lead, but it's not really a lead.
So this red mirage, that's really what you expected to happen on election night.
Happens every time.
But in 2020, Trump pretended the blue shift was surprising and suspicious.
We were winning in all the key locations by a lot, actually. And then our numbers started miraculously getting whittled away in secret.
No, there was nothing miraculous or secret about it. But it's easy to see why people who don't know about the red mirage could be tricked into thinking that something unusual had happened.
And finally, the Supreme Court allowed Virginia to remove about 1,600 people from the state's voter registration rolls less than a week before the presidential election. After a federal judge ruled that Virginia purged 1,600 people from the state's rolls too close to the election day in violation of federal law, guess what the Supreme Court did? The Supreme Court turned around and granted Virginia's emergency appeal with no reasoning, but I think we all know the reasoning.
Mm-hmm. Hey, just know that we're already voted. We hope you voted. Get out and vote, and we'll see you. Keep the faith.
Well, and I'll tell you what, we had a visit the other night, a couple nights ago, from a door knocker.
Yeah.
Now, we got signs in our yard, everyone knows, but this is how efficient the organization is. It was a young lady who was handing out literature for what to do if you spot election interference. Here's who you should call if you're being intimidated, if you're being told not to vote, if you see anything weird, a whole packet, a QR code, and who to call if you spot anything funky going on with Republicans trying to screw around people's voting.
Mm-hmm. And there was a handwritten PS, love your yard signs.
Yeah, that's local politics, man.
Yeah.
That is really well organized. So bless her heart, whoever she was.
And that person was from the Democratic Party, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So they are on top of this. And if you see people interfering, because they're Trumpers.
Call Mark Elias right away.
There is a process, right? Right. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitty is Mystery Black Cat.
Yeah.
Listener Joseph wrote us, "This bewitching feline came up to our house and stared at my wife yesterday. They wouldn't come any closer. Happy Halloween." And of course, Mystery Black Cat eats freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store direct, that feral cat in the yard will sit out in your yard and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured. Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured. And you can visit Mystery Black Cat at our Facebook page or website, proleftpod.com. And you can send your Internet Kitty, dog, or other pet to us at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you, and thank you to everyone who's emailed birthday wishes to Driftglass. It is not too late to donate. He has a fundraiser at his blog, or you can just donate to the podcast, and I'll let him know that the birthday gift arrived that way.
I'll get my 20%. Yeah.
You know, it all goes in the same pot. I'm afraid it pays our bills, but that's fine. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go Postal Unions! Letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Do not forget our gourmet coffee guidelines, because there is a merciful God. Pumpkin spice season is coming to an end today, and I couldn't be happier. But if you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, even if you're one of those pumpkin spice people, buy one for us. This isn't charity. This is, in fact, our job. If you can spare $5 a month or more, please spare $5 a month or more at patreon.com/proleftpod. Please share this show on social media. And if you love this podcast, and I know you do, please get someone else to listen. And that makes a big difference. And thank you for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
Well, this week, the Internet Kitties would like to remind our audience that we will be off next Tuesday on Election Day, because we'll be joining Hal Sparks for one segment of his 24-hour election-a-thon-a-thon. So we'll see you on the other side. Good luck to us all.
See you on the other side. We love you.
Bye.
Let's think about living. Think about living. Let's think about loving. Think about loving. Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.